Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. This podcast has evolved over the 5+ years since it first launched. From now on, I'm going to be talking about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. And also mindset, of course, but mindset of all kinds, not just business mindset. I think. Things are changing for me, as you may have noticed if you've been following me online or listening to this podcast, so anything goes here. I hope you stay along for the ride. Thank you so much for joining us today, and now let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 320. This is your host, Holly Worton, and I'm back with another solo episode. Today, I'm going to talk about how to give yourself permission to make time and space to let creativity and creative ideas come through. So, I've talked a little bit lately in recent podcasts about how a lot of my goals have kind of wrapped up and I'm in this weird space, like I kind of have ideas, I have plans. I've not been as driven and focused and doing as much of my own creative projects as I would like. However, I've been starting to realize that I think this is a necessary kind of dormancy to let new ideas come through. So today I'm going to talk about how to give yourself permission to make time and space for this creativity, for these creative ideas to come in. And talk about how this differs from just normal alone time, downtime, and meditation time. I'm also going to talk about how to let go of the guilt that might be keeping you from making this happen, because I always feel really guilty. I don't know if that happens to you, but I feel really guilty when I give myself permission to just not do anything. And unlike most episodes, I haven't planned this episode very much before getting started, which makes me kind of nervous because I usually do like a lot of research and thinking and bullet points and note-taking before I get started. But today I've decided to just roll with it because this is something that I'm very much in the middle of myself. So this is another one of those episodes where I'm learning as I try to help you, helping myself at the same time that I do this podcast. So let's get started. So this was inspired, as I said, by recent events in my life where I've just been, there's a certain amount of work that I have to get done and I've been kind of getting that done and I've been really focused on that stuff and really efficient about getting that stuff done. And then the second half of the day, which is kind of where I would normally devote to my own creative projects, I'm not really doing much. And I feel like sometimes I waste that time because, again, I feel guilty. So I feel like, I have to look like I'm on my computer. Look like I'm on a computer to who? To myself? Like no one's monitoring my work and am I working on this stuff? So I waste time sometimes just fiddling around on my computer. Sometimes I will get off the computer and go to my room or go downstairs and sit with a book and read. But what I haven't been doing, which is what I really need to be doing, is giving myself space and time to do nothing. Not to go on a walk, not to meditate, not to have my morning routine, but to just do nothing. And I'm very much reminded of this because a couple of years ago when I channeled my heart-centered energy work process, might have been 3 years now. 2 years? 3 years. Anyway, whenever that was that I did that, I was really struggling to bring it in. And what my guides told me was that I needed to make space. And so what that looked like was me just sitting on my bed, open to receive, with a journal where I could write it down when it came through. I wasn't sitting there meditating. I wasn't sitting there visualizing my goals. I was just sitting there waiting. And that's really hard for me, just kind of sitting, seemingly with no purpose, but with the purpose of receiving. And that's what I needed to do to allow that new process to come through. And I'm very grateful that I did. And not the moment, but I had to sit there for a while. But the very first day that I did this, that I gave myself the space to allow this creative process to come through, it happened. I just needed to make the time and space. And I think this can be applicable for lots of other things. If you're looking for your next project, your next hobby, your next business thing, I think sometimes we need to just sit and be quiet and have some place to record the thoughts and ideas when they come through, but just give ourselves the time and space for those creative downloads to come in. So, how does this differ from alone time, morning routine, downtime, meditation? So, for me, in my perspective, this isn't just time alone to relax. It's time where you're not doing anything. It's time where you're just open to receive. It differs from meditation in that you're not repeating a mantra, you're not purposely clearing your head of thoughts and your mind of thoughts and releasing thoughts when they come in. On the contrary, you want to be paying attention to the thoughts that come in case they're a creative download. It's different from downtime in that it's not about integrating healing. So a while back, last November, I did episode 279 on downtime. Are you getting it? And what I talked about there was what is downtime, what is integration time, why we need to allow integration time for doing the inner work and the healing, how to know when we need downtime. So if you feel like you need downtime or integration time, go back and listen to that episode 279, which I will link to in the show notes. But that's not what I'm talking about here. You might need some downtime in order to prepare yourself for this kind of creative download time. But what we're doing here is we're just sitting in the peace and the quiet with the intention of opening and relaxing to receive creative downloads. So it might help you to have an idea of specifically what creative downloads you want to receive. Are you looking at rebranding your business, rebranding your website? You want to kind of download the look and feel so that you can tell your web designer or your graphic designer. Are you working on writing a new book and you don't know what the topic is? Are you working on creating a new online program? Want to receive the details? Are you working on stepping into a new identity and want to get a feel for what that might look like? Creativity shows up in all areas of our life, and we all have different forms and different ways of expressing our creativity. And sometimes we get blocked. Sometimes we get stuck. Sometimes we're not really blocked or stuck. We just haven't made the time and space for these creative downloads to come through. And I think that's kind of what's happening to me with my upcoming book. I want to do a second edition on my South Downs Way book. I want to still update my business mindset books. I have this new personal development book that I want to write. I've just received a message from my guides about another book that I need to do. And I don't know, none of it feels quite right. But I think that's because I haven't given myself the time and the space to really see what is the right next book for me. I haven't received the creative download of what's the next best thing for me to be working on. And I think this is a time to just slow down, disconnect, and go within, look within, and be open to receive the flow of this creative energy, of these creative ideas. So one of the things that stops me from doing this, like I said, is guilt. It's really hard for me to give myself permission to just sit and, I'm going to say this in air quotes, do nothing. And I think that's the thing that trips me up, because sometimes doing nothing is the thing that we need to do. And doing nothing is doing something if you're doing it with the intention to give yourself the time and the space to receive creative ideas. It might look to an outsider like you're doing nothing, but it's something. And I think that's something that I need to remind myself over and over. And so if you also struggle with guilt over not giving yourself permission to, again, just sit and receive, remind yourself that this can be a very, very important part of the creative process. If I hadn't done this, I wouldn't have received heart-centered energy work. And that was a really, really important process for me to receive because it completely changed the way I worked with clients, the way I help people on my Patreon. It was really, really important for me, and I really struggled until I gave myself the time and space to receive. I've been reading this book by Jack Kornfield called After the Ecstasy, The Laundry, How the Heart Grows Wise on the Spiritual Path. And this was recommended to me at a retreat I did a couple of weeks ago. And I finished it yesterday. But there's this little bit that I just want to read to you. Because when I read that, I thought, that's what I need to do for the next podcast episode. It was like the second I read it, I knew this is what I needed to talk with you about. So what he says, but the wider community of being tells us that without the winter chill months of dormancy, there can be no apples. Stillness, non-doing, listening are as important and essential as action in the mandala of awakened life. So again, I'll link to this book in the show notes. It's called After the Ecstasy, The Laundry. So let's pick this apart. I, of all people, as someone who is studying Druidry, should know there are cycles in life. And you need the winter chill of the winter air, the crisp coolness, the dormant months for the apples to grow on the tree. It looks like nothing's happening, but it is. There are cycles to everything. And I think it's easy to forget that. It's easy to forget that sometimes we're going to have really productive phases where we're doing a lot of stuff. And then sometimes we'll have cycles where we need to slow down and open up to receive the creative energy, the creative ideas for the next phase of our creative process. And this is all about slowing down and giving time and space for this to come through. So as he says, stillness, non-doing, and listening are as important and as essential as action. I forget this all the time. Like I know it, but I forget it. You know, I always talk about mindset work and practical action going hand in hand. But there's kind of another side to the coin of practical action, and that is stillness, listening, giving yourself time and space, non-doing, except you are doing because you're making that space, that giving yourself that time to receive that creative information, those creative downloads. So if you're feeling stuck, frustrated with your creative projects or life in general, maybe just give yourself permission to sit and receive and set the intention of what it is that you want to receive in terms of your creative downloads. How long will you need? I don't know. 20 minutes? Half an hour? Multiple sessions? You'll know once you get started. 10 minutes maybe. Maybe try 10 minutes. Look in your calendar and see what space you have or what space you can make. You might have to wake up a little bit earlier to add some time to your day. You might need to go to bed a little bit later. You might need to say no to some things. You might need to cancel some things that are essential. You might find that you get super efficient in doing some of the work and you've got some time left at the end of the day. You will also know what is the best time of the day for you to make this happen. Is it morning? Is it afternoon? Is it evening? Is it nighttime? Do you need to do this inside? Sitting on your bed, sitting in a favorite chair? Do you need to do it outside? Sitting in the woods? Don't overcomplicate this. Don't feel like you need to create a whole production, ceremony. Really what you need to do is just sit. Give yourself time and space for the downloads to come through. And have some place to record them. Have a notepad, a pen. I would say probably don't bring your computer with you. I think when we disconnect, we need to fully disconnect. And I think sometimes having those kind of your phone or your computer or tablet, having those kind of electronic elements, which we use for work, business, and sometimes creativity. I think having those with us when we have this creative time, space, can keep us in that work mode. So I would say bring a piece of paper, a notebook, something where you can write it down, but not necessarily electronically. Do it on paper. But maybe I'm wrong. Find what works for you. Whatever I say, whatever advice I give is always adaptable to what feels right for you and what you need. So I'm being very kind of strict in saying that what you need to do is just sit and do nothing. And I do believe that there's a time and a space for sitting and, again, within air quotes, doing nothing. However, you can also combine that non-doing or apparent non-doing with other ways of accessing your creativity and receiving creative downloads. You might try journaling, just free writing, and set the intention to get creative downloads and see what comes up. Or you might do art journaling. It's been ages since I've done that, but I find it really, really useful. Get a nice journal with thick paper and just paint whatever comes up. It doesn't have to be pretty, just be splotches of color on a paper, and see what that does for you. You might dance, you might sing, play music. There absolutely are other ways of accessing your creativity and receiving creative downloads. And that might be what works best for you. But if you haven't tried giving yourself time and space to just sit and be still and not do anything, set the intention to receive those creative downloads, I really, really recommend that you give it a try. It's been really, really powerful for me in the past, and that's probably what I'll be doing when I get off this podcast. So I think this is going to be a short one, because that's pretty much all I have to say on the topic. I encourage you to give it a try, and if you do, please let me know what you thought, how it worked for you. You can find me at holly@hollyworton.com and email me, or find me online and get in touch. If you have a better way of accessing creative ideas, please let me know. Again, get in touch. And of course, this non-doing, this time and space to receive the creative downloads, can be combined with anything else. Like maybe you want to meditate to relax and clear your mind before you start the non-doing. Maybe you want to listen to a guided meditation to relax before you start the creative downtime or the creative non-doing. Maybe you want to dance. Maybe you want to do the art journaling, other stuff beforehand. Or you could just sit and open up to receive those downloads. Please let me know what worked for you, what works for you in general, what you tried, and what your results were. I would really, really like to hear from you. And as always, I am open to your topics for the podcast. I hope to be back with Joe and Joanna very soon, now that the summer's over or approaching the end. And I'm open to receiving your topics. Not looking for other guests at this time, but I would love to hear if you have any things, topics or ideas of things that you would like me to talk about. I really, really enjoy speaking to the subjects that I get from listeners. So please drop me a line and let me know. And that is all for now. It's a short one this week, which is good because last one was a long one. So thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts or leave a quick review. That would be fantastic. It would really mean the world to me. So remember to visit hollyworton.com/320 for the show notes and links for the show. Thank you very much. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollyworton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.